Take a trip back in time with Millennial Memories, the podcast where Chris and Sean dive into the heart of 90s nostalgia, the music, movies, TV shows, and pop culture that defined a generation. So grab yourself a fizzed-up can of AC Cola and let's rewind to the best decades ever. Because it's time for Millennial Memories. This episode of Millennial Memories is titled Introduction.
G'day, I'm Sean.
And I'm Chris, and welcome to Millennial Memories.
Now, big thanks to Slick Mick, our producer. He's an AI genius, and he's the man responsible for all of our research.
Mick's the man putting it all together. As he mentioned in his intro, today's about AC Cola.
Now, here's a quick refresher on AC Cola. AC Cola debuted in 1993 and was introduced by Kmart. And AC stands for Australia's Choice.
1993. Makes you feel old when you hear that. So back in the 90s, if you can believe it, you get a cold can of AC Cola for 50 cents in Queensland, 30 cents in other states. The AC brand also did biscuits, chips, juices and more.
Chris and I tried to get AC Cola for the show. Unfortunately, we've had to settle for Diet Coke. That's all we've got because, sadly, Australia's Choice was discontinued in the early 2000s. It's gone.
Gone like most good things. So with that little blast from the past, let's dive into this episode.
Yeah.
Whassup! Whassup!
On this episode of Millennial Memories, we're going to be diving head first into some cool shit.
We'll kick things off with a look at our top 5 individual interests, and then we'll explain the whole premise of the show.
Then we'll take a deep dive into what makes a millennial, followed by the top 10 highest grossing films of the 90s.
That's going to be fucking rad. Looking forward to that.
It's going to be rad.
Yeah. Then we've got a versus segment where we'll compare 2 iconic decades, and we'll make a trip to the Tuckshop and revisit some culinary memories.
I'm excited. Little hint. We're going to share a memorable Australian story later on story time.
And then it's time to crank up the Wibblescope and the Seanometer for the very first time on Rewind. And of course, we'll wrap it up with some pearls of millennial wisdom on final thoughts.
But for now, let's do some facts first.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Now it's time for Facts First.
And this is just hot off the facts from Mick. So let's dive into some facts first. So Sean, millennials are without a doubt the first true digital natives.
I'd agree with that. A whopping 93% of millennials own smartphones, and 85% of us are on social media regularly. That's a pretty big digital footprint.
It is a massive digital footprint. So speaking of digital footprints, here's another big one. So 61% of millennials have at least one streaming service subscription. So whether it's Netflix or Disney Plus or KO, probably the biggest one here in Australia, I'd imagine.
Yeah, KO would be big here. Streaming is sort of where it's at now. You don't have to go and get a DVD or a video or any of those things now. So streaming's a big thing. But we'll talk about the economy, even though we don't really want to.
No.
That's, at the moment, not something that we want to talk about. However, millennials entered the workforce just as the Great Recession of 2007-2008 hit. Not the Great Recession of 2025, but we'll keep moving.
So I actually remember 2007. That was when I entered the workforce. So it wasn't a pretty time to come in as a graduate.
No.
So many millennials were forced into long-term unemployment early in their careers, like myself. But it was a tough start.
On top of that, we have a fact here from Mick that says millennials carry an average student loan debt of $32,000, 32 grand on average. So no surprise, getting to buy your own home is
It's getting delayed, right?
Pretty difficult.
Yeah. So following on from that, in fact, the average millennial now buys their first home at 33 compared to previous generations, which was in their late 20s.
Yeah.
So we're definitely not in the same financial boat.
No. Not all doom and gloom, though. Millennials are, according to the facts here, are the most educated generation, with 39% of millennials holding a bachelor's degree or higher, which is higher than any previous generation. And I'm not saying previous generations were dumb, but I am saying that previous generations were potentially dumb.
Not as smart, anyway.
However you want to put it, mate.
However you want to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a positive trend. And it's also leading the way for big social changes.
Right.
So, for instance, 70% of millennials believe in climate change is a serious issue.
Yep, I am not a part of that 70%. I think it's rubbish.
So we'll have to agree to disagree there.
Yeah, okay.
So last but not least, here's a stat that really hit home. So 73% of millennials report struggling with mental health issues, with almost half of those seeking therapy.
Yeah, this day and age, I think people do prioritise their mental health, and a lot more is understood around that kind of thing. So it's good to see we're doing something, right?
So there you have it. So millennials are defined by technology, social consciousness, financial hurdles, and a lot more. So we're a complex generation, but one thing's for sure, that we've certainly made our mark on society.
Okay, and the last fact for the Facts First segment today is if you were born in the 1980s, raised in the 1990s, and made it to 2025, you've lived through 5 different decades, 2 centuries, 2 different millennia, and you're not even 50 yet.
Wow, that's amazing.
Not yet.
Not yet. I'm nearly 50. We're nearly there. All right, so let's throw to a quick countdown.
You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep you down. You're the best around. Nothing's gonna ever keep
Now it's time for a cheeky top 5.
Okay, so this is our very, very, very first top 5 for Millennial Memories. And what's happened is Chris and I have gone our separate ways for a little bit and filled out our top 5 interests, okay? What we're going to do and how we're going to run top 5s is we're going to go from 5 to 1. So, Chris, hit me with your top 5.
So, number 5, video games. So, again, taking me back to the 90s. So, you're either a Nintendo or a Sega kid back in the day, and used to love video games. So I think most kids did back in the 90s. During the 80s, we got introduced to real consoles, proper consoles, and 90s they'd run away with it, with the 64 and the PlayStation. So that was huge. Yeah, it was huge in the 90s. Number 4 was sport. Sport was a big part of my life in the 90s. Football, tennis, surfing. So I think most kids would agree that was probably a big part of their life in the 90s. Number 3. Music. So in the early 90s, you got a lot of grunge come through. So you had your Pearl Jams, you had Nirvanas, you had all these great bands come through. Took us out to the end of the 90s, and then everything changed and was diabolical after that. Number 2, I would say movies, blockbusters. Nothing compares with the 90s movies. You had Jurassic Park, and I was one of your favourites.
Yep.
There was just so many fantastic movies come out in the 90s, and it's a shame that...
Late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, late 80s.
That's your favourite
Absolutely,
period?
absolutely for movies, 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Nothing tops it for my mind. And then number 1 was travel. So it was the first time...
That's interesting, right?
And it was mid-90s. First time I went overseas to America, and loved travel ever since. So that's my top 5. You?
Okay, mate. So my top 5, my number 5 was... much like yourself, video games. You can see behind Chris and I, there's video games everywhere and consoles and all that sort of stuff, which now you'd call that retro.
You would, yeah.
Retro gaming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just grew up on that, and I was more of a Nintendo kid than a Sega kid, but I did have a Master System. But we'll get into some of this stuff in later episodes. But video games is number 5. Number 4, again, like yourself, I had movies, I had films, again, blockbusters, the summer blockbusters, when you had school holidays, and you'd go to the cinema and you'd with your mates and you'd watch
That's when movies was an experience, right? You get with your mates and you go. It was a big deal.
And also, like, we had VHS and DVD, and we'll go into some of that stuff at another time about the different genres and the different media styles and how movies evolve. But for me, film was a big thing. It was a big thing as well when I actually... finished school and went to university. I did a degree that had one of the majors was film, so big part of my life. Number 4, I had something that's maybe a bit out of left field, but I'm a real nerd for dinosaurs.
Yeah, you are. Ever since I've known you, you've been huge on dinosaurs.
Putrid, really.
Yeah.
Putrid.
Disgusting.
I want to do a show later down the track of this about dinosaur art. We'll see if that actually happens, but I don't know how keen Wibbles is for that.
There's a full 40-minute episode in that, surely.
At least. So yeah, massive on dinosaurs, massive nerd. Spent a lot of time digging in the dirt, hoping to find a fossil. Found none.
Well, we did find that one that time.
We won't talk about that. We'll move on from that. Number 2, I had comics. Now, you can't see on the video, and obviously you can't hear comics, but there are a shitload of comics in this room. This room is the Millennial Man Cave. There's stuff everywhere here, and if you're watching the video on YouTube, you'll see some of those things. But yeah, comics was a big thing. I grew up watching X-Men cartoons and collecting X-Men comics in the 90s and into the 2000s. I stopped for many years, And in the last 5 years or so, I've started to get back into comics. So that was number 2. Number 1, like you, Chris, music, grunge, massive for me. But I've been in bands for a long time.
You have, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't see it on the video, but there are guitars hanging on the wall. There's guitars everywhere, and I've been into bands and making music for a long, long time. I guess Beatles was a big one.
Beatles, yeah. Well, we both had a massive love of the
Big Beatles
right?
fans.
Huge.
So,
Absolutely.
and that's not millennial stuff. That's way back. But just music in general, been huge. So that's my top 5, Chris.
Well, not a bad top 5.
All right, let's move on.
Now it's time to take a deep dive.
Well, thanks, Mick, for that. This is a deep dive. So, Chris, we're going to go and have a look now a little bit deeper into why being a millennial is, I'm going to say, simply the best. And there is a reference there, but I think it's the superior experience as far as being, a specific generation.
Worlds, I would say.
I think so.
Yeah.
So we've got some points here that Mick's researched, and we're going to go through them, and we're going to talk about each one. The first point is digital pioneers, right? So millennials were the first to embrace the internet revolution. I 100% agree with that. We witnessed the rise of the web, social media, and smartphones, while other generations were fumbling around with rotary phones and floppy disks. Now, I'll just pause there for a second. I do love me a good floppy disk.
Who doesn't love a good floppy disk? Did you like the 3.5 inches or the 4 inches floppies?
Oh, look, I'll stick with 3.5 just to be safe. But the point is, we were out there inventing memes, mastering social media, and shaping how we connect online. That was a big part of the millennial experience. We'll go with that. Number 2, what have you got for me?
Number 2, cultural revolutionaries. So we just didn't follow trends. So we define them. So from Facebook to Instagram to the way we consume music.
Yeah.
If everyone remembers back to the Napster days, and big shout out to Metallica and especially Lars there.
Thanks, Lars.
Thanks, Lars. We love you.
Yeah.
So we created new ways to experience and share culture. We brought diversity, activism, and fresh ideas about equality to the forefront of global conversations. So other generations weren't so far forward thinking, I would say, in terms of their cultural
I'd agree
revolutions.
with that. I'd agree with that. Number 3, resilience in the face of adversity. I'm going to pick on other generations again. We're doing this a bit. Sorry, guys, but anyway. While the boomers got to thrive in a relatively stable economy, and they did. You could buy a house for 2 seashells and a bag of chips or something. And Gen Z, or Z, I guess it's Z. This is American, but we'll go with that. Had a smoother ride with tech, and they definitely do have a smoother ride, and I think that's because of millennials. But millennials were handed the short straw because we had economic crashes, job stability was up the shit, sky-high debt. We still have sky-high debt.
Yeah.
We still managed to thrive, so we're pretty adaptable, resourceful, and we built what's called the gig economy. Now, the gig economy is, I guess it's like having the side hustle.
And everyone's got a side hustle these days. There's no one, I think, in our generation that doesn't really have a side hustle.
You could maybe...
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
You could say this is a side
hustle.
It's not a hustle, it's just on the side.
It's a gig on the side.
It's a gig on the side.
It's a gig on the side.
Yeah.
Now, I told you earlier we're going to look at some cool shit.
You did.
We pioneered the cool. So let's talk about style. Let's talk about music and the media. So the 90s and the early 2000s were the peak of pop culture. Now,
Definitely.
talking of the peak of pop culture, that only brings to mind a couple of things. One, Backstreet Boys.
Of course.
Absolute peak of culture. We had NSYNC. Absolute peak again.
The peak of human existence.
It was incredible. The music
Yeah.
they pumped out in those days was incredible. Look at that photograph. Who are those guys?
Creed. No, Nickelback.
Nickelback. I mean, again, amazing band,
Wonderful.
incredible.
Wonderful.
That was the peak of cool. So we also the golden age of TV with Friends and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And fortunately for us as millennials, as we touched on earlier, we got to experience the peak of blockbusters, I would think, in the
Definitely.
90s. I mean, can anyone top The Matrix or Titanic? I don't think better movies have been done in 25 years.
Is Titanic still,
I think so.
or is it Avatar?
We'll
We'll find out at some point.
We'll find out, yeah.
We might find out
That
today.
sounds like a segment.
That does sound like a segment.
Yeah, it does.
The work-life balance, very important nowadays. Everybody's talking about it, but I think millennials were the generation that pioneered that shift, right, towards meaningful work, flexible schedules, and great emphasis on mental health. Definitely something that we all sort of look at now when we get when you apply for a job now, one of the things you look at is its flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Work-life balance is so important.
So not always just the paycheck. Like, you want to have purpose and balance in what you do. And I think that we're the first generation probably to do that. Meanwhile, the boomers, who are, some of them are still around and our bosses, and they are really keen on being in the office every day. They love it.
They love it. Yeah, that's what
grinding it out.
Yeah. No better way to spend your life. Why wouldn't you do 9 to 5? Even 6 days a week if you wanted to.
Mate, do it 7. Do it 8.
Do it 8.
Fuck
8
it.
days a week.
Fuck it, do it 8.
It's got a ring to it.
That could be a song.
That could be something. Point 6, let's touch on here. We were the OG entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs. So while everyone else was still figuring out how to use a computer, the millennials were creating businesses from scratch. Yeah. So the power of social media, e-commerce, and the sharing economy. So Etsy, Uber, Airbnb. That was the millennial generation.
Yeah, there was a time when you were warned against getting into a car with strangers, but now we do it all the time.
And you pay for the privilege.
That's right,
you
exactly.
pay a stranger, here, take my money and take me somewhere.
All right, so here's the bottom line, because Chris and Sean said so. Being a millennial means you are...
Is this the bottom line?
It is the bottom line. It is. At the crossroads of tradition and revolution. I like that.
Absolutely.
That sounds right to me. I think so.
We've got that older generation mentality in terms of work ethic, but we're also on that cusp of technology. So 100% we're there at the crossroads.
I think so. And we made it look easy.
Easy, yeah.
Easy.
That's what we did.
That's what we still do. We continue to do.
Yeah.
That was our deep dive. Thanks, Mick. Over to you, mate.
Now it's time for a top 10.
So we're jumping into the top 10 highest grossing films of the 90s. So not necessarily the best films, but the highest grossing films of the 90s. And this is all, of course, research according to Mick. So it's
all about the money.
It's all about the money. Cash money.
Dollaries.
Dollar bills, right? dollar bills. So this is going to be a list packed with some nostalgia, some blockbusters, and some of the most iconic films made during the what I think is the greatest movie making period of all time. So Sean, you ready for this?
I am ready. It was a golden age of cinema, at least in our opinion.
In our opinion, yeah, for sure.
The 80s, great films. There are some very iconic films from the 80s, but the 90s, big summer blockbusters, and they made their mark. So we'll start off with number 10. Chris, what was number 10?
Number 10. This one goes out to the late Val Kilmer. This was Batman Forever from 1995.
Right.
Directed by Joel Schumacher. This was the superhero flick, of course. It starred Val Kilmer as the Cape Crusader. It was a major departure from Tim Burton's earlier films. They were a little bit darker. This one was a bit more comical, but still managed to become a box office hit. Who could forget Jim Carrey as the Riddler playing Jim Carrey?
Yeah, he did have a habit of being Jim Carrey in every film. Bruce Almighty. No, not Bruce Almighty. There's a film where he's quite serious. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes.
That's one Jim Carrey where he's not Jim Carrey. Yeah. The rest of them, it's Jim Carrey. But in 9th place, we have The Fugitive from 1993, which grossed $368 million. It's a lot of money for a thriller. But anyway, directed by Andrew Davis and starring Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. Everybody remembers the iconic "I didn't kill my wife" scene, mainly because it's been parodied by The Simpsons. So it's "I didn't kill my wife, I don't care."
Coming in at number 8, we've got Big Tommy Cruise and his Mission Impossible from 1996. So this one was directed by Brian De Palma and starring, of course, Tom Cruise. Was this before Scientology, Tom Cruise? Yeah, it was.
I think
pretty sure it was. This is when Tom was pretty cool.
Yeah, 96. That predates the Scientology.
Yeah, this was cool Tom era. This was an action-packed spy thriller that launched one of the biggest and most successful franchises in film history. And who could forget that iconic scene where he drops from the ceiling to stop only meters from the bottom of the floor.
And then he catches the drop of his own sweat in a glove.
Stop the alarm going off. Incredible. One of the great scenes in movie history. Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. At number 7, it's The Matrix, 1999.
Massive film.
$465 million. Sci-fi action film directed by the Wachowski brothers.
Brothers, sisters, who knows? Movie makers.
They were brothers at this time.
Yeah.
Things changed over the years. Innovative special effects, very much so. And the concept of bullet time. Everyone remembers bullet time. You remember Keanu Reeves?
Whoa!
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it.
We just did that.
Mr. Anderson.
That's it. 90s vibes. Very much. And I think it's become like subject to a lot of memes now, some of that stuff too.
Massively.
It's parodied so much. But yeah, that was number 7. What's at number 6?
And everyone knows it. Number 6. This was a huge film when it came out. This was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air moving into Independence Day. So it was directed by Roland Emmerich. This was an alien invasion blockbuster that gave us Will Smith, Jeff Goldblum, and some seriously mind-blowing special effects for the time. Still a great movie now. The effects hold up, I think, like most of these movies do. But it became the quintessential 90s sci-fi action movie and a symbol of the genre.
The President Saves the Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Need we say more?
That's what he does.
Will the current president save the Earth?
In the same
Trump's
methodology, I would think.
gonna do
yes. If you don't know what we're talking about, go and watch the film. You can see Trumpy.
If you don't know what we're talking about, and you haven't watched this film, you probably don't want to listen to any of what we're talking about. That's all I got to say. Number 8, a shit show.
A shit show.
A shit show. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, 1999, grossing shit tons of money in a film that was shithouse.
Played on nostalgia. That's what it was. Let's be honest. It played on nostalgia. When did you say the last film? The previous film was?
It was Return of the Jedi in 1983, I believe. And look, it was people just jumping on the nostalgia bandwagon. We're doing that right now. But it was one of those things. It was so highly anticipated that people just paid their hard-earned dollars to go and see George Lucas's absolute abomination of racial stereotyping and one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. A Jar Jar Binks, a Mr. Shithouse. Terrible.
I think he's one of the most hated characters in movie history.
Oh, he has to be. Has to be. And look, the Darth Maul thing was all right, but terrible. Number 4.
Coming in at number 4, I think one of the greatest movies ever written, and one of those movies that everyone's seen because it's so iconic. And of course, it's Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
So this one obviously is the heartwarming drama about a kind-hearted man who unintentionally influences several key historical events and became a global phenomenon.
Very clever.
It was the way they introduced him into certain aspects and events. It was an incredible, heartwarming story. And of course, who could forget the iconic line? Everyone knows it. Life is like a box of chocolates, but there's a better one, right?
In the buttocks.
In the buttocks. Where were you shot?
In the buttocks.
So,
or the other one that's really good. I need to pee. another great line. Too many
classic.
Dr. Peppers.
Too many Dr. Peppers. That was his undoing.
You wouldn't have that here though.
No.
No one drinks Dr.
No, it
Pepper in
tastes like
Australia.
medicine. It's garbage. Don't try it, kids.
Number 3.
What
the
do we
classic
got?
Lion King. The Lion King.
Mufasa.
1994. 968 million, just shy of the billion.
$1 billion mark.
Directed by Roger Allers and Rob Minkoff. With animations, it's hard to remember some of the directors' names, but that was a masterpiece from Disney. I will say,
it was.
unforgettable music, characters, and the story is amazing. We actually were in the States in 1994 and when it had come out, and we saw the Disney parade through the main street of Disneyland. Incredible. I've actually seen a live performance in Las Vegas as an adult, not as a child, of The Lion King, and it was also pretty phenomenal. So, what's number 2, Chris?
Now, look, I know you've got a hard on for this one, so introduce us. Hit us with it.
All right, number 2 is the greatest film ever made. Not
What
just
is
my.
it? Tell me, what is it?
It's Jurassic Park, 1993's life-changing film. At least for me, it was a jaw-dropping 1.046 billion. It's probably made more than that now. If you look at, I guess,
franchise-wise, you mean?
Merchandise, and if you're going to go franchise, it'd be something phenomenal. We'll get Slick Mick to check that out. Steven Spielberg's the director. Groundbreaking film. I love dinosaurs, and I love them even more after 1993. And as a 9-year-old watching this in the cinemas, I was out of my mind with this, and have been obsessed with this ever since. In the Millennial Man Cave, which we're in right now, if you look around, Wibbles,
Dinosaurs. Jurassic Park.
Specifically Jurassic Park.
Parks.
My stubby cooler that I'm holding here is a Jurassic Park stubby cooler. My favourite film, hands down. Still holds
up today. Yeah, it's a
100%.
fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, which I don't know how you couldn't, make sure you get out there and get yourself a video card and go to Blockbuster.
Do yourself a
Go to
favour.
Blockbuster and rent it over the weekend.
Also, there's a new Jurassic film coming out.
Yeah, there is. I'm doing. Oh, yeah. I don't know.
You don't talk about that?
No. I think.
Well, we'll move on. What is number one?
Number one movie. I don't think it's too hard to guess. From the 90s, more well known for its soundtrack and one particular song than anything else. And of course, it's Titanic. 1997 with a record-breaking $2.2 billion and directed by James Cameron. So this was the epic romance and disaster film that took the world by storm, becoming the highest-grossing film of all time up until 2009. So it won 11 Academy Awards and gave us one of the most iconic love stories in cinema history. But you think there's a couple more?
Well, I think that the love story between Robert Muldoon and the Velociraptor is probably my favourite love story.
It was
Clever girl.
Blossoming. I mean, that was really big.
Cut short.
Yeah, cut short. Tragically short, I would
cut
say.
short. Well, same year, same premise in Titanic.
Yeah.
Cut short.
Like most great romances are.
But there was another love story with Leo in it, Romeo and Juliet. Not a film I like.
No, it wasn't one that I liked.
But I'm surprised, Chris, that it's not on the list.
No, I would have thought it would have made the list. So again, but this just shows the quality of films that were around in the 90s. So
that's true.
I mean, hard pressed to beat this list, I think. So, so there you have it, guys. That was our top 10 highest grossing films of the 1990s, from epic romances to the sci-fi blockbusters. These films captured the hearts and audiences worldwide, and
for sure,
become cornerstones of 90s pop culture. And again, I just think it was the best period for movie making. It's
huge films, a lot of technical advancements,
big actors.
Well, I mean, you didn't see any of the huge action stars. There's no Stallone or Schwarzenegger in this list, but 90s films, some great stuff there. What a ride! All right, I think it might be time for a fight.
It's time for a fight.
Fight on. It's time for Versus.
Fight! So, fight time. So, in Versus, what are we doing here, Sean?
We've got the 1990s versus the 2020s. So the 90s versus now.
So this is going to be an epic showdown of two different decades, right?
Yeah.
So now I know some of you out there might be feeling that the 90s nostalgia, but let's break that down into some key areas and let's see how these two decades really stack up.
Now, we're only halfway through the 20s, it's 2025, and we're going to look at some of Mick's research here to put some pros and cons back and forth and I guess see if there's going to be a victor out of these two decades. And again, even though we're halfway through, I think it's going to be a fun comparison, Chris.
I think so,
So we've got everything from pop culture, right, to technology, fashion, and even the economy, dare I say it. And we're going to dive in and start with the ultimate battle, so pop culture and entertainment.
Pop culture and entertainment. Okay, so this one's going to be a fun one. So let's look at the 1990s first.
Yep.
So the 90s, of course, in our eyes were iconic. We had TV shows like Friends, of course, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the X-Files. Who could forget that spooky music on the X-Files?
It was killer.
And of course, they're still beloved today. Like, I mean, you can still watch these reruns. And then there's also the music. Who could forget that? We talked about the cool NSYNC, Backstreet Boys earlier. We got the grunge. We had Nirvana.
Yeah.
The hip-hop legends like the Tupac and the Biggie Wars back in the day. And, of course, getting back to music, we had Britney Spears, Backstreet
Your
Boys.
favourite,
My favourite. Of course, I love those guys. Had all their albums,
cool.
posters. And don't even get me started on movies, which we, of course, will touch on. Titanic, The Matrix, Jurassic Park, of course, The Lion King, plus many more. And the video games. I mean, who can forget the video games? The 64 come out, Super Mario, GoldenEye, Legend of Zelda. That was just... It took the world by storm when the 64 came out.
It did, and I do agree, all those things are iconic, but we'll talk about the 2020s, and it's a whole different world now, a whole different landscape. The biggest change is streaming. I think streaming is probably the biggest. So platforms like Netflix, Disney+, KO, HBO Max, Paramount+, it fucking goes on forever. Yeah. Every single thing, like even music, Spotify, everything, it's ridiculous. It's completely reshaped the industry. TikTok's done the same. There's viral entertainment, right?
Viral entertainment.
We're currently on a
problem, right?
We're on a podcast, and we're filming ourselves making a podcast here, and that is viral entertainment. It's a completely different world. Movie theaters, they're on the way out.
They are big time, yeah.
Drive-in theaters, drive-in cinemas.
That used to be a fun thing as a kid, right?
Absolutely gone, pretty much. I don't know any left. I think there's one left in Queensland that I know
There is
of.
one at Yatala.
At
Down the
Yatala.
Gold Coast, there is.
Yeah, but they're basically all gone, which is pretty crazy,
Yeah.
especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. And social media, whether you love it or you hate it, it's transformed pop culture, and there's influencers shaping trends in celebrity culture. We're not influencers. Hell, this is our first podcast. We're just having a crack at putting some of our thoughts out into the ether. But yeah, very different landscape.
It is.
Verdict, thoughts?
So the verdict, I'm a little swayed here. So I'm going to say, obviously, I think the 90s. They just had that special nostalgia. And there was a magic about the 90s, you know. Like we said, there were so many great things produced in the 90s. But the 2020s offer a more diverse, globalized, and accessible entertainment experience. It's not like you... And by experiences, you look forward to going to the movies. You look forward to going to Blockbuster and renting something. It was a different...
But it was a challenge to do that.
It was a challenge to do
Now,
that.
in hindsight.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like now, you just want to watch a film. You can just...
YouTube it or whatever.
So we're saying the 90s? Is that the verdict?
I'm
on
saying
this,
90s. I'm
on verdict?
100% 90s.
Okay.
90s.
We're going 90s for pop culture entertainment. And next up, we're going to talk technology and innovation. The 90s were a huge turning point, like massive. Massive.
Yeah.
The internet was booming, or started booming. 95, Windows 95. I think in Australia, a little bit different in Australia. People didn't have home PCs until kind of the late 90s.
Yeah, I'd say late 90s. If you were rich if you had a computer in the mid 90s.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Especially even, well, it's weird to say it now because they don't have them in computers anymore, but a CD-ROM drive.
A CD-ROM drive, yeah.
Big deal, right? Cell phones. No one calls them cell phones anymore, right? Smartphones, touch phones, whatever you want to call them. Massive. They became mainstream in the 90s. The 90s was when that technology really started to take off. Mobile phones, for people who don't know, were very, very different back then, but nevertheless.
You had snakes.
Snakes.
Yeah, you had Snake.
Snake, yeah. It was such a good
Snake.
game. Then we had consoles with cartridges. That was pretty... blowing the cartridge, you've got to clean it out. Do you know you're never supposed to do that? We'll talk about that in another episode, but there you go. PlayStation, Nintendo 64, changes that alter the way we live. Those consoles, there's some behind us, definitely was iconic. Changed the world.
Changed the world, yeah, absolutely.
2020s?
So 2020, so if we fast forward to the 2020s, and we're not talking about game changers like the 5G, artificial intelligence and virtual reality. Smartphones are now superpowered devices, of course, and social media has become an omnipresent force in everyday life. I mean, you can't escape it. Like, unfortunately, you just can't escape it.
All right, I'm going to go with the 2020s on that one.
2020.
It's a big call. I think that as far as technology and advancements in technology, it's changed things, but I think mostly for the better. And I say that because, well, there are pros and cons, obviously, but being able to reach out and talk to somebody you haven't spoken to in a long time via Facebook or social media, that's a pretty big thing. And I think that the 2020s, like our current state of play, I think probably maybe just outdoes the 90s.
Place. Yeah, it's a smaller place, definitely, these days.
But I mean, without the 90s, setting the foundations for that technology, we wouldn't have that. But yeah, I'm going to go, I think it's the 2020s.
Okay.
For that one.
Well, we'll just have to disagree on that. So let's.
I was going to say it's 1 for 1. 90s
it's 1 for 1. 1 for 1. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Right. I think you're wrong, but anyway. Okay, I hear what you're saying, Sean. But okay, so let's shift gears here. Let's get into some politics, the good stuff, and society. So the 90s were a time of relative global peace, the end of the Cold War, and the rise of democracy, and the spread of globalization were all big themes. We saw the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and the internet was becoming, I mean, it was just booming at that time, and allowing us to connect the world in new ways. So the world really became a smaller place during the late 90s especially. Of course, there were still issues like the Gulf War and early climate change awareness, but it was an era of optimism, I'd say.
Yeah, look, I would say the same thing about the 90s. The 2020s, on the other hand, more significant social movements. These things are stuff that I don't think is particularly, I guess, fun to talk about, but it is important that there's a push for equality and diversity. I think that is important overall. And so I do think that the political I guess, the political landscape now probably is a bit better than the 90s, because there's a bit more, I guess, understanding, a little bit more. I guess there's so many things have happened since COVID as well, and it's had a massive effect on health and mental health and the way people do things. So as far as politics and society, the 2020s, a lot of change, a lot of cultural change. I'm going to say, and I think you probably agree, the 90s for society itself was probably maybe a better period of time.
Absolutely, it was a better time. Yeah, it was an easier time. There wasn't so much stress, and you weren't as contactable, I'd say. That's what made the 90s so good.
The right to disconnect.
Yeah, the right to disconnect. Yeah, absolutely.
That's one thing. Also, there were. I was going to say there were some pretty cool characters in the 90s, like Bill Clinton, but we've got Trump.
We've got Trumpy, yeah.
But we don't.
No, we don't.
In Australia, we don't. We've got Albo.
We've got Albo.
Albo. Yeah, well, he's not much of a character. He's fairly innocuous, but anywho. All right, so we're going to go, I think we go the 90s there, Chris.
90s, yeah, I'm with you.
90s 2, 20s 1. All right.
Stepping into your next favourite topic, we're going to talk fashion. We're going to talk 90s
Thanks,
fashion.
Mick. Thanks, Mick, for some of these topics. It's a bit deep.
I mean, I hope we can bring up some images for you on the TV here. I mean, there was some great stuff in the 90s. It was an absolute fashion roller coaster. So we had the baggy jeans, remember those?
Yeah.
Flannels.
Remember?
Flannels. I mean, they were everywhere.
Flannels are still everywhere.
Bucket hats. It was a true mix of streetwear and high fashion. There was a lot of blending going on at those times. Brands like Tommy Hilfiger, the Levi's and Adidas were huge. Remember the Adidas jackets and it was everywhere.
There are people who still
cling to those fashions. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, fast forward to today, and fashion in the 20s is all about embracing retro trends. So that's what I'm saying.
It is.
People now wear clothes from the 90s. Don't they?
They do, yeah. It's just regurgitated.
But that's happened.
version.
That's happened. I think
forever.
Forever.
Yeah, forever.
I mean, people would. It was like in the 90s, people thought wearing clothes from the 70s was cool, and then the clothes that were kind of new in the 90s are now cool.
Cool again. Yeah, that's right.
It's very bizarre. The 2020s fashion is all about, I guess, sustainability in fashion. We're talking about social media influencers. People on TikTok, what they do and what they wear and how they do their makeup and all that sort of stuff. That's a big thing now, particularly for Gen Z. Not so much for us. But I think the 90s.
I think the 90s for sure. The 90s, they were, I mean, had some great stuff in the 90s. Fashion-wise.
Well, we're saying that the 2020s, a lot of the fashion is based around the stuff from the 90s, so it's working on this nostalgia, which we love, obviously. And in the 90s, those fashion trends were new. So in the 90s, the stuff that people were doing in fashion was new at the time. And now we're just copying that in the 20s. It's got to be the 90s, right?
It has to be the 90s.
All right,
absolutely.
90s
we're sold on 90s.
90s are killing it.
I think we're sold on the 90s, right?
All right.
Who do you think wins? I mean,
look,
who are you sticking with?
Look, I did have the 2020s, I think, having a win, but overall, I think the victory has to go to the 90s.
It has to. Yeah, if you're someone who values iconic entertainment and the simplicity of digital life and good old nostalgia, then the 90s. I mean, you can't go past them. You can't go past the 90s, I don't think.
So I think we have a winner.
We have a winner.
We're
going to crown the 90s the winner. I'm sure there's going to be people out there who disagree, but
if they do, you don't have to listen to any more we've got to talk about, because you're going to be disappointed.
You're going to be very disappointed.
It's all about the 90s.
It is. It's all 90s.
We have a winner. Victory, the 90s.
Victory.
There it is.
Victory.
It's Tuckshop time.
All right, Chris. So this segment is called Tuckshop. Now, we're just going to explain Tuckshop for the first episode of Millennial Memories. I'm just going to go through what we're going to do moving forward. So Tuckshop is going to be where Chris and I will talk about, obviously it's a podcast, about a specific, say, a food item or a drink or something culinary that is now long gone. And we did that at the start of the episode with AC Cola, briefly, but Tuckshop will explore in a bit more depth something that's gone. Like maybe we'll talk about, I don't know, the Viennetta, that dessert, or we'll talk about
the Viennetta. Everyone loved the Viennetta.
But for the first episode here, we're not going to get into any specific item. What I wanted to do, Chris, was cast your memory back, all the way back, not that long, we're not that old, but long enough to remember the actual Tuckshop. Now, schools have tuck shops now, or canteens, or whatever they call them. We'll have different names in different schools, right? But the tuck shop was what we used to call it. And there was a process, right? Do you recall the process? How did you get your tuck shop?
There was a process. So it used to be a Friday normally. You'd get your tuck shop. You'd get a little brown paper bag. Your mum would put $5 in there and write on the front your name, your class.
Yeah, right.
It would be like, say, Chris, class 6A, and then would write one by sausage roll and one by drink or something like that.
Breaker.
And breaker. Chocolate breaker. Yeah, it used to be the go.
If you're not in Queensland, you probably don't know what a breaker is. It's a chocolate milk or a strawberry, anything flavoured milk, right? The breaker.
And then you'd hand the little bag to the teacher. They'd put it in a basket.
Yeah.
And then one kid would get picked. It was a big duty. It was and they would have
a lot of responsibility.
It was a lot of responsibility. There must have been like $30 in that whole basket. I mean, at one point, a lot of money.
I don't know if it was about the money. It's more about if you didn't get your sausage roll and your breaker,
you're dirty.
Yeah, you'd be filthy. So the tuck shop, for the school I went to, tuck shop was the same sort of thing, but you could also go up and stand in line, and you could buy what you wanted over the counter. But kids nowadays, I've learned.
I didn't know this. Yeah,
I've now learned kids nowadays can actually use FPOS. They can actually pay with a card. They can turn up or have a preloaded like bank card or credit card, go up to the tuck shop, tap their card, and get their food.
Unheard of.
Give me a brown paper bag any day of the week.
Any day of the week. Give me the classic 90s. And then you get the wrong change. It was awesome.
Now this is a story.
Thanks, Will, and thanks, Mick. Good stuff. Welcome to our very first story time segment. Yeah. So story time is basically where we're going to dive into some stories that are interesting, sometimes forgotten, about Australian celebrities and icons, people we may or may not remember. And today we're kicking things off with a true Australian character. Now, it's a man who captured the nation's attention with his larger-than-life personality and his love of, well, cleaning products, believe it or not. And we're talking about none other
the one and only
Big Kev.
Well, I would say he was an icon. Big Kev was an icon. Yeah. So a name that nobody would hear, or a lot of you wouldn't even know today. But Big Kev back in the late 90s was absolutely everywhere. So he was born in the 1950s from Melbourne, and Big Kev was a man of many talents. He was an entrepreneur, firstly. He was a huge television personality, and you knew Big Kev because he had these bright shirts on, he had this big bold personality, and most notably he was the face of his own cleaning company, so Big Kev's Ltd.
You might remember Kev had some infomercials, so that was his big thing. He'd shout out, "I'm excited!" And we did allude to it earlier, but that enthusiastic sort of catch cry became the thing that got him into the mainstream. He was a guest on Good Morning Australia, where he would always have this sort of banter with the host, who was Bert Newton. Australians know who Bert Newton is. Moonface, right? Old Moonface. People loved Kev's energy, catchphrases, and his excitement about cleaning products. I mean, ultimately, that's what he was. That's
what made it work. That's what made Big Kev work, right? It was his over-the-top personality.
Yeah,
it was larger than life. Like that was Big Kev. And it wasn't all about smooth sailing for Big Kev, though. He had his troubles. Absolutely had his troubles, Big Kev. I think financially and otherwise.
Yeah, Kev was known for being flamboyant and fun-loving guy, and partying. I didn't know this until Slick Mick gave us the notes for this segment, but I tell you what, he had a brother called Little Steve.
So you have Big Kev and Little Steve.
I shit you not.
You can't make this shit up, right?
But Kev had some legal problems. Okay, he got hit multiple times for drink driving, including one time he had a reading of 0.121. That's twice or more than twice the legal limit. And in 2001. Big Kev was at his biggest. He was 146 kilos. And so for anyone playing at home who doesn't understand that, it's 322 pounds for you Americans.
Yeah, he was a big boy.
Let me show you how my all-Australian-made products clean up around your home.
Red wine on the carpet?
Use Big Kev's stain-free.
Can't see out of the window?
Big Kev's window cleaner plus protector.
Mould on the outdoor furniture?
Big Kev's heavy-duty mould remover.
Hot plates with baked-in grime?
Use Big Kev's Power Plus.
Wow!
There you go, Australia. My products really work. Look for them in your cleaning aisle at your local supermarket. Let's join the fight to buy back our country. I'm excited.
Kev wasn't shy about his larger-than-life presence, both physically and personally. So, in the early 2000s, he took the Australian market by storm.
Yep.
Advertising his products like his Ultra Laundry Concentrate.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone remembers that. And Kev made it clear that his products were 100% Australian. So that was a big selling point for Kev. He was one of those guys, a bit like Dick Smith, Australian. Everything was Australian. And he also proudly wore his Australian flag T-shirt everywhere he went.
It was a button-up.
It was a button-up, yeah.
And it was a shiny shiny button-up.
Yeah.
He looked great in it. Yeah.
We'll have some footage for
Let's not forget his stint on TV. So I didn't know this, actually, so I did forget, but Slick Mix reminded me. Big Kev hosted a low-budget variety, like a late show?
I didn't know that.
I don't know.
No idea.
I'm going to try and track down some footage of this because Big Kev, he was on fire in the early 2000s. He was in commercials. He was floating his company on the stock exchange. He had his own late night talk show. Things were looking good, but unfortunately, 2004, he hit some more financial troubles and they started to compound. And his position as chairman of his own company, he was forced out. Big Kev.
That's when Kev lost his excitement. He's unexcited.
Yeah,
so
downfall for
It was
Kev.
a downfall.
Yeah.
It was a fall from grace for Kev from then on, pretty much. So sadly, things didn't improve for him after that. Despite his charm and his business struggles, health issues kicked in. I guess when you're weighing 150 kegs, it's going to catch up with you and living the party life.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, in December 2005, Big Kev passed away at the age of 55. So pretty young. No, it's not real old. Due to a heart attack, no less, caused by a staph infection.
Sad end to a truly memorable character of Australian pop culture. Big Kev had his ups and downs, but he'll be remembered for bringing a unique brand of energy and excitement into the lives of many people, and he was a one-of-a-kind personality as far as infomercial cleaning product salesman go.
Like him, no.
No, he's one of the best.
Yeah.
One of the best.
Absolutely.
It's a shame.
So he might not be with us today, but he has a legacy, and we salute you, Big Kev.
Well, that wraps up the first instalment of Storytime. Look, I'm excited. And
you got to say it. I'm excited.
I'm excited. Apparently Big Kev also had the phrase Big Kev knows.
Ah, never heard it.
No, I don't know anything about it. But what we're going to do, though, now is we're going to get critical about something new from the past in the segment we're going to call Rewind.
Rewind.
Now it's time to be kind and rewind.
Okay, so on Rewind, Chris and I will look back at something old, but for the first time.
So I haven't seen it, you haven't seen it. It's something that we never experienced before, but it's old.
Yeah. So over the next 12 episodes, we'll review things like it might be a movie, could be a TV show, could be an album. We're not sure. We'll figure it out as we go along, but the main criteria will be something we missed.
Something we missed the first time around. So it could be something from the 80s or the 90s that we never saw, watched or listened to. But this is our opportunity to go back in time and look at it.
That's right. So we'll
rewind.
Turn back the clock. We'll rewind. We'll turn back the clock. We'll check it out. And we've got something for this episode. What have we got? Tell them, Wibbles.
Well, we have 1994's Mosquito. Heard of it? I didn't think so. But we're going to be doing it just for you.
A 90s mess that we all missed. So we'll be back after we talk about Mosquito.
Mosquito.
From the producers of The Blob and Prince of Darkness, and the special effects wizards behind Evil Dead 3, Hard Target, and Batman Returns, comes the science fiction film of the year. It came from another galaxy. It transformed one of Earth's smallest insects into a bloodthirsty swarm of terror. Now, 5 people brought together by fate will confront their worst nightmares.
There is definitely something out there. aliens, and they're everywhere. And this guy's obviously been zapped.
Are you insinuating that my brother and I have done anything wrong?
Something is killing these people and sucking them dry of blood.
It's a mosquito, all right, I'm positive.
Take a nap, pal.
AIDS, mosquito AIDS, hundreds of them, thousands of them.
Ain't life a bitch?
Steve Dixon. Ron Ashton. Rachel Loisel. Tim Lovelace. And Gunnar Hansen, star of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They will fight to survive and battle the ultimate enemy.
Man, the Late Show doesn't get any better than this.
Alright, so Mosquito from 1994 is a low-budget, very low-budget, cult horror film directed by Gary Jones, brother of Indiana Jones.
Ah, that's who he is.
That's who he is, yeah.
I knew I recognised that name.
The plot centres around a group of people stranded in a remote area after their plane crashes, and while trying to survive and find a way to escape, they discover that they are being hunted by enormous mutated mosquitoes. Of course they are.
Of course, yeah.
Of course
What else is there to do?
These giant insects, created by a combination of toxic waste and radiation, which is, just so you know, the recipe for giant mutated mosquitoes, attack and kill the survivors one by one.
That's the recipe.
That's what it
toxic ooze. Well, you could have had turtles, but you got mosquitoes instead.
Oh, it just depends on what animals, yeah. In this case, unfortunately, mosquitoes.
That's how it works. Okay,
Yeah.
so as the group attempts to escape this perilous situation they find themselves in, they must contend with the deadly mosquitoes, and they're particularly aggressive and also relentless in their pursuit of these poor
I would
humans.
expect no less.
Terrible. So the survivors' fight for survival becomes a battle not only against the deadly creatures, but also the wilderness they find themselves in. So two fronts there. Kill the mosquitoes, kill the wilderness. It's coming after them. And the film combines elements of creature feature horror with a bit of dark humour mixed in for good measure. And as these characters attempt to survive, they grow increasingly desperate.
As you would.
Like this show at the moment.
Mosquito is known for its campy special effects. Mosquito's not known at all.
No, it's not known for anything.
Over-the-top performances and its blend of gory horror and absurdity. It has become a cult favourite, again, not sure about that, due to its unique premise and its place in the subgenre of giant monster films. There you go.
Okay, so we've watched this film, so you don't have to, and now it's time to give it a rating. Over to you, Slick Mick.
Crank up the Wibble scope. Okay, go ahead, Chris. Pull the lever and give us your Wibble score. How many Wibbles out of a possible 4? That's a disgraceful score of only 1 Wibble. Jumpstart the Sean-o-meter. Alright, go on, Sean. Push the button. Let's have your Shawnee score. How many Shawnees out of a possible 4? That's a dreadful score of only 1 Shawnee.
Well, Mosquito.
That was Mosquito.
Yes.
What'd you give it?
Well, 1 Shawnee is all it got, and
1 Wibbles. It was diabolical. Absolutely diabolical. But
Yeah.
I must say, the special effects, incredible. They're right up there with Jurassic Park's. Yeah. What was your favourite part?
when we turned it off.
Yeah, mine too, actually.
Yeah, that's
mine
it.
too.
I thought the ending was interesting, and here's a spoiler alert: they destroy all the mosquitoes and their eggs.
You've just given away. You've given away the best part of the movie.
Sorry, Gary Jones.
No.
I've ruined it for everyone else.
Unbelievable.
Don't
Give
do
it away.
yourselves a favour. Don't watch it. Absolute pile of shit. One of the worst. And I'm glad we missed it the first time round, and I wish we'd missed it the second time round.
It's a steaming pile of dog shit.
Yeah.
We've just done you a favour. That's our one, I think. That's our...
Here's our final thoughts.
That wraps up the first episode of Millennial Memories. On the next episode, we'll get stuck into the cartoons that we all grew up with from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s.
I'm looking forward to that one. That one's going to be a banger.
Yeah.
So that's it for today's episode of Millennial Memories. Thanks again for joining us on this nostalgic journey.
We had a blast reminiscing about some of this stuff, and if you enjoyed the show, again, our very first one, make sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. Tell us what memories you'd like to see next, and we'll add it.
Maybe we will. Maybe we won't.
Yeah,
Hard to
maybe.
say. So we'll be back with some more throwbacks and a bunch of other random shit that you might like.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Over to you, Slick Mick.
Yeah, catch ya.
Catch you, dog.
That's all for this episode of Millennial Memories. Don't forget to follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. Until next time, stay rad.